introduction about Haifa. Haifa is the third biggest city in Israel. Its population is about 300,000 people. Most of them are Jewish. There is about 15% Arabs who live in Haifa, so it's a mixed city. And today we're going to do a kind of a tour from Haifa, the old city of Haifa, which we'll see through scenery. We're not going to walk there. And then we'll go through the new city of Haifa, which is represented in Hadar neighborhood, one of the modern neighborhoods of Haifa. A bit more about myself before we begin our scenic view here. As I said, I'm 32 years old. I live here in Haifa because I fell in love with the city. When I did a year off before my military service, I did some social work here in Haifa, here in Hadar neighborhood. And after a couple of years, my wife and I decided that we want to come back here to Haifa because of its, I don't know, it's a beautiful city. I didn't see, someone asked something through chat, so Esther will...
Just asked if anyone would like to write down if they've been to Haifa before.
Yeah, if you've been to Haifa before, that's you can write in the chat. So before I hope that instead of saying am and oh, how do you say this in English, I hope that it will be fluent. So let's start and see what we see. I'm here in the Memorial Garden in Haifa. I'm walking to the scenery here, the scenic view here. And I want to show you what I see from here. We have a very good day today because as you see, the sun is behind me. And I'll flip the camera and I'll show you a bit what I see now. We're looking now, Haifa is the only city in Israel that you can look north and see the sea. The sea in Israel is on the west side. So Haifa is the only city when you look north, you can also see the sea because it's located on the edge of the mountain, Mount Carmel, and in the edge of the bay. The bay itself is called the Akko Bay or Ekre Bay because the biggest city and the most important city in the history of this region, the northern part of Israel, the biggest city was for a long time Akko. Just a minute. Oh, now I'll do a bit zoom in. I can do. Okay. You see there, I'm looking north towards Akko. Akko, for most of history here in the region, Akko was the big city, the important city. All the commercial, all the history of the area was located in the northern part of the bay. And you see the bay here. The building is a bit distracting, but you see the bay here and also the port. We'll talk a bit about them in a second. You can also see, I'm looking now north, you see this big building. Between this big building and that big building was the old city of Haifa, one of the old cities. We'll talk a bit about that in a minute. And you can also see the old port. This is the old port there. So, as I said, Haifa is the third biggest city in Israel. It's located on the edge of the mountain. Which mountain? This mountain. It's very difficult to see because of the sun, but you can see the Mount Carmel. It's like a big tongue of land that goes into the sea. It's very high in in comparison with the rest of the part here. So it was very important strategically, and it was it's a very iconic picture of Haifa, the bay and the mountain behind me. Because of the sun, I won't flip the camera back because you won't be able to see anything. Why is it called Haifa? It's a very interesting thing because Haifa, in contrast with a lot of cities in Israel, has no establishment date because throughout most of history, people lived here near the bay, near the sea, mostly living off the sea. But Haifa wasn't a very big city throughout most of known history. It was also always a place where human settlements were established and rebuilt, but as a city, its history is very modern. Throughout most of the history, the people here in Haifa didn't live in the big city as you see now, but mostly lived in the edge. There, as I showed you earlier, the old port. Okay, this was the place where Haifa Elatika. Haifa Elatika in Arabic is the old Haifa was established there. Most of the people there, most of the people here in Haifa Elatika lived from the sea, were fishermen, or for part were also pirates. It was a pirate city. But Haifa is a very important place because it's one of the oldest ports in Israel. Why do I say? From the one hand, it's a very old port city. On the other hand, it wasn't a very important place. What is the name Haifa? I started to ask what is the name Haifa? Well, Haifa, you can see me? I saw someone.
No. Yeah, we can see you.
Yeah, okay.
Esther, you can't see anything.
Your share screen is not working, Estelle.
Screen sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try again.
Well, take it out, please. Thank you.
Can I
Let's
try
go back
again?
to me for now.
Can I just try again?
No.
Okay, now, for most part, as I said, Haifa in Arabic is the word for a rock. So Haifa is a rock, Kaifa in Arabic, because of the mountain. It's a very important place because during the Ottoman Empire regime here in the land of Israel, Akko was destroyed during the 19th century, no, the 18th century. So Haifa became a big city and a very important place. Why do I say that? I said Akko was the biggest city, the most important one. In the mid 19th century, Egyptian rulers conquered all the parts of the Ottoman Empire that were here in Israel, and they incinerated Akko. So Haifa was the second port here, so it became a more important port, more important harbor. It's increased its value and its status here in Israel. Sorry, I need 1 second. I'm very nervous and I'm very excited. I'm sorry for that. This is why I'm a bit, I'm trying to rearrange my thoughts. So I talked a bit about Haifa. about Akko and about the history. Where was the old city of Haifa? I said earlier, you saw there, I talked about Haifa Elatika. It changed my perspective for somehow. Oh, now you can see the presentation that Esther shared with you. I want to show you how Haifa looked in the 19th century. This is the city of Haifa, a painting of the city of Haifa in the upper left corner of the presentation. And the upper right, you can see Mount Carmel, the same mountain I showed you a second ago. This is the edge of it that touches the water. And we can also see here a map that was illustrated in 1880. As you can see, the city of Haifa that you see now in my picture, in my scenic view, you can see it's a big city now. But Haifa in the 1880s was very small. You can see on the PEF map, PEF, the Palestine Exploration Fund, you can see Haifa Elatika, it's written in English, okay? You can see also the German colony, the first red section in the map. And you can see also Haifa, another Haifa. How is it that there are two Haifas? So in 1761, the ruler of the Galilee, Dahir was his name. He decides that the pirates in Haifa and the old city of Haifa is too old. So he decides to erect them and to rebuild the city of Haifa as a modern city. He decides to build Haifa, the new Haifa, in the narrow spot between the mountain and the bay, okay? So what you see now down in my picture, in what I'm filming now, you can see a big building, a big, אסתר, תפסיקי את השיתוף מסך. A big building in gray. You can hear me? אני לא מצליח, זהו. לא מצליח לי. אסתר, תפסיקי את השיתוף מסך.
Okay.
Oh, now. You can see a big building here in gray colors. The Haifa al-Jadida, Deir el-Omer's city, new modern city, was built in this area. It was a modern city. So what do you need in a modern city? You need walls, you need gates, you need fortresses to create security. So he builds a new city in the narrowest part between the bay and the mountain. Its northern gate is called Jaffo Gate because it leads to the road to Jaffo. The southern gate, which was somewhere where you see the big building that looks like a rocket. In Haifa, we say it looked like its name is the rocket building. The second gate of the city was where you can see this building. It was the southern gate, but it was called Akko Gate because the road there led to Akko, from there to Akko. And he built a city that is a mile and a half in its length and approximately a quarter of a mile in its width. So it's a very small city in modern terms. But in those terms, it was a big city. And in this city, he builds a wall. Do you see anything from that city? Deir el-Omer was the ruler of the northern of Galilee. He was a ruler that was appointed by the Ottoman Empire. He builds the city, and nowadays we don't have any remnants of that city. We know about it mostly from maps. In Haifa, there aren't a lot of remnants from the old days, from the old Haifa. But this is what we know about it today. It was a big city for that time because Deir el-Omer takes all the villages in the area, and there were a lot of villages and villagers, and puts them in the city. And he calls this city the new Haifa because we had the old Haifa, Haifa el-Atika, and now we have the new Haifa, Haifa el-Jadida. Okay? In the city, there is also a Jewish community, not a big one, but this community becomes bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the 19th century and the 20th century. So this is what we see today from Haifa. What else can we see here? We can see one of the iconic characteristics of Haifa, the port. You see how big it is? It's one of the second biggest port in Israel. And it serves all the northern part of the state. I'll go from here to another place so you can see me.
And now let's talk about why Herzl.
Why Haifa and why Herzl? This is the big question. So I wanted to show you what Herzl writes about a port. What is the Rocket Building? The Rocket Building is the big building out behind me. You can see it. In Haifa, we're calling it, today is the complex of the government complex. All the government authorities that, wow, I'm sorry, 1 second. All the government authorities and the משרדים, wow, are sitting there. Esther, I want you to show them the port, the quote of Herzl. And we'll hear the quote of Herzl when he talks
Were I
about...
to sum up the Basel Congress in a word, which I shall guard against pronouncing publicly, it would be this. At Basel, I founded the Jewish state. If I said this out loud today, I would be answered by universal laughter. Perhaps in 5 years, certainly in 50, everyone will know it.
Okay, back to me. So what is the connection between Haifa and Herzl? I'm trying to stand in a place where you can see me and the view behind me. It's very difficult because of the sun.
What is it doing?
Okay, here it's a bit better here. Okay.
Were I to sum up the Basel Congress in a word...
In order to understand the connection between Haifa and Herzl, you need to know a bit about Herzl. So I'll, in a couple of sentences, who was Herzl? Herzl is considered the visionary or the dreamer of the Jewish state. He was born in 1860. I think most of us know one or more things about Herzl. But the more important thing I wanted to talk about here, the things that are connected to Haifa, okay? Why is Herzl connected to Haifa? Herzl was a journalist. He was a lawyer. At the age of 18, he started studying in the University of Vienna. At the age of 24, he finished his studies with a doctorate degree in law, okay? After a year working as a lawyer, he decides that he wants to work as a journalist because he thinks he knows he's
I'm going to butt into for
thank you.
Because as I'm sure everybody knows, the basics about Herzl. What a lot of people don't know is that after the first Zionist Congress, and I understand from Dima that in 2 days it's the 38th Zionist Congress, so it's very apt to date. Herzl actually visits Israel. He actually visits the land of Israel. And what you can see in the share screen are actually photographs from his visits to the land of Israel. In Mikveh Yisrael, he actually meets the Kaiser, he meets the German emperor. But what's interesting here is he actually doesn't set foot in Haifa. He greets the Jaffa port, but he doesn't actually set foot in Haifa. But on the other hand, he writes a very important book, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. And in that book, he writes about the ideal city, what he sees as the ideal city. Back to you, Udi.
Thank you. Herzl visits Israel in 1898. He comes off the ship in Jaffa. He's with it's hot in the middle of October in Israel. It's hot. Now, today also. He sprains his ankle when he goes down from the ship. He has a fever. He dressed in a German traditional suit. So his encounter with Israel is a very, it's not very inviting, okay? But Herzl visits Jaffa, and then from there he goes to Rishon LeZion, he visits Mikveh Israel and also in Jerusalem, but he doesn't set foot in Haifa. With saying that, Herzl writes he starts writing in 1889, after his visit in Israel. He starts writing a book that will become his visionary book. Alt Neuland, the book is called. Alt Neuland in Hebrew, Tel Aviv. In English, an old new land. Okay, he writes about the connection of an old people with their old country, but with a modern twist. And Herzl writes this novel and publishes it in 1902, and it becomes a very a part of every Jewish people idea to what a new country, what the new old country should look like. The first encounter, the book is a novel that depicts the story of two people, kind of like Herzl character, that comes to a visit to Israel, to the land, the Holy Land, after they decide to leave Europe and go to the Indian Ocean to live on an island. And Herzl gives, on the way, they visit Israel, and Herzl gives in their mouth, speaks through them, and shows what these guys, or what Herzl himself experienced in his visit to Israel. A very unmodern place, a very hard people, hard experience here. This is the experience of those two guys at first. But after 20 years in the island in the Indian Ocean, they decide to go back to Europe, and again they go through the land of Israel. But then Herzl gives them, or says through them, a new depiction of this country. And he first starts his new depiction in Haifa as the futuristic city. He shows, or I want you to let them hear the quote of Herzl. Esther, what is the new, or this new experience with of these two characters, of Herzl characters, with the new city the new futuristic city of Haifa.
Udi, whilst you're walking to the town hall,
Yeah.
there are two questions. What about, is there the Navy base there? And the second question is, how did Herzl consider the need to cooperate with the Turkish authorities and with the local, those who are the indigenous peoples, those who are already living there?
First of all, the submarine port is over there, as I told you, it's the old port. We see now the old port. This is the old port there, okay? So one of them is the harbor of the submarines. There are a lot of ports or harbors there for the military ships and for the submarines. This is the modern port, okay? Which was built in 1933 under the British mandate. The British were the ones who decided to place Haifa as their main port in the Mediterranean. So they built here a new civil port and a military port, okay? So what we see now in the video is the British port. Behind it, you can see the new port. It's a Chinese port, okay? Herzl, Herzl, Esther asked me about the cooperation through Turkish authorities. Herzl tried to create, his idea was to get a charter to move the Jewish people from Europe or from around the world to the land, to a different location outside of Europe. He decided to, sorry.
No, we didn't hear that. Hold on.
Yeah, someone yelled at me.
We want
you
to
hear
make
me?
sure that Udi doesn't get a ticket from the local policeman for not wearing a mask. I suggest moving to town hall.
Yeah, I'm moving towards town hall.
And in the meantime, I'm going to share a screen and show the next slide.
You can hear me? Esther, you can hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. So Herzl wanted to get a charter to move the Jewish people from Europe. He first tried to contact British authorities. He also tries to contact to get this charter to move the Jewish people. He contacts the German Empire authorities and also the Turkish government at that time. But his idea for a charter didn't work, because after 7 years of political in politics, you can say, Herzl dies in 1904 without getting this charter. But this was his idea, to move the Jewish people to somewhere else. In his first book, the very important also, the Judenstaat, or the Jewish state, he has a chapter that says Palestine or Argentina, it doesn't matter. You need to move the Jews from Europe, because this is the question, this is the answer to the Jewish question. This is Herzl's ideas, because Jews in Europe didn't actually become more and more intertwined to their surrounding, and anti-Semitism became a very hard, very how do you say it? Anti-Semitism rose its head very difficult, very hard when Herzl was in Paris. So in 1896, he writes the Judenstaat, the Jewish state. And after his visit to Israel, he starts writing Alt Neuland. In his book, in Alt Neuland, Herzl describes his vision not only for a Jewish state, but mostly to a Jewish society, to a new society here in Israel.
Having seen the port, let's read what he says about.
As I said, the Herzl's description of the new city begins with this, the new society begins with this quote.
A city on the blue sea turned out to be beautiful. This was the most convenient and safest port in the Mediterranean. Ships of all sizes, of all types, with flags from all the nations, will anchor there peacefully.
So, for Herzl's vision, the first encounter
on the blue sea turned out to be beautiful.
The first encounter of his character in his book with the new society that can be here is an encounter with the port, because the port is a gate to the world. From there, people go inside, and from there, commercials go out. Commercial go outside. So this is a very important idea in Herzl, kind of creating a new society, a cosmopolitic society, and the city of Haifa becomes his ideal for this new society, a city, a futuristic city. But as you can see, when Herzl writes about Haifa, this is what Herzl sees. He doesn't see because he's not visiting. He didn't visit here in Haifa, but he hears about it. He hears about Mount Carmel, about the bay, okay? But it didn't actually take foot here in Haifa. Haifa in the 1900s, in the beginning of the 1900s, is a small city, a bigger city than Haifa Latika was, but it's still a very small one. Two main things changed its course. One of them is the port, as I said. The first modern port was established by the Ottomans, but afterwards, in the mid 20s and the beginning of the 1930s, the British took over and started and developed a new and modern and very big port, as I said. But the second thing is the railways, the train. Okay, the Ottoman Empire decided to create Haifa as a main port before the British, and they decided to put the main train station in the Mediterranean, the main train station of the Hijazic train, the big train that connected between two parts of the Ottoman Empire. The biggest station on the sea, train station, was in Haifa. So Haifa became a bigger city, and it also attracted a certain kind of population. Port workers, train workers, okay? It became a blue-collared city. One of Haifa's most iconic people is its first mayor, its first modern mayor. His name was Hassan Bey Shukri. Hassan Bey Shukri was Arab. Haifa, as I said, you need to understand, Haifa, until the mid-40s and into the War of Independence in the 1948, until then, Haifa was a mixed city, 50% Arabs, 50% Jewish, okay? The Jewish population in Haifa became bigger and bigger throughout the 30s. And Hassan Bey Shukri was elected in 1927. He was elected after he was appointed to be a mayor in 1920. And afterwards, he was elected again in 1927. And he was the mayor for Haifa throughout the end of the 1920s and until 1940, when he died during office. Hassan Shukri is a representative of the idea of creating a society, a mixed society, but that that sees the other one as equal to you. Why do I say that? This is what Herzl writes in his book about the connection or the relationship between Arabs and Jews here in Haifa and in Israel. Estelle?
Let me tell you that my friend and I do not discriminate between humans. We do not ask what race or what religion he is from. He has to be a human being. That is all that's important for us.
In 1927, when Hassan Shukri was elected, Haifa is an Arab city. More than 70% of its population are Arabs. So you would think that if a mayor is elected in an Arab society, or as we say, or today, when a Jewish mayor in a Jewish city is elected, you think that most of his care will go to his population, to the Arabs. So if he's a Arab mayor, most of his care will go to the Arabs. Hassan Bey Shukri decides not to do the same routine, as you say. He starts by appointing a representative to the Jewish community in the town hall. Why? Hassan Shukri, in that time, the Jewish population are very, very little in Haifa, about between 10 and 12%. Why do you need a representative in a small city? I don't know, but Hassan Shukri, until Hassan Shukri, there wasn't any representation for the Jewish community in Haifa. Although he's Arab, he decides that every memo that the town hall issues will be in 3 languages: in Hebrew for the Jewish, in Arabic for the Arabs, and in English. Okay, in order to create an equality or a seen equality between Arabs and Jews in Haifa. Hassan Shukri wants the Jewish population to be a more active part of its of the community. So he also appoints a deputy mayor, a Jewish deputy mayor, in 1927. So Hassan Shukri decides to take the ideas. He didn't read Herzl, but his ideas are very connected to what Herzl writes about. Herzl writes about a kind of society that everyone can feel close to, everyone can feel a part of. If you're Arab, if you're Jewish, if you're Orthodox, if you're secular, if you're a man or if you're a woman, it doesn't matter. Everyone should feel and be a part of this society. This is what Herzl thinks, and Hassan Shukri takes these ideas not from Herzl but from his friends and from his experience, and tries to create them as a reality. So this is why he decides that the government, that the government's offices, or the town hall offices, should be between the Jewish neighborhood and the Arab neighborhood. So everyone will feel secure to come and get serviced or get his service without feeling a sense of insecurity by going through the Jewish, or if an Arab goes through the Jewish neighborhoods, or if a Jewish go through an Arab neighborhood. So in Haifa, there's a kind of a, although it's a mixed city, and until the 1940s, it was it's a mixed city. Until the 1940s, there was a lot of connection between the Jewish community and the Arab community. Arabs and Jews worked together in the ports. Arabs and Jews worked together in plants. Until the 40s, it was a very intertwined coexistence. In 1948, something broke this coexistence, and I'm in the Memorial Garden, and I want to show you this memorial. This memorial garden is the one of the first that were built in Israel after the Independence War in 1948. You can see here the Haifa in stone. This is the city of Haifa. Okay. You can also see here a soldier and something that looks like a dying soldier on one hand, and on the other hand, like a dove. So it's a depiction of the coexistence of the society that lived here together until 1948, but something broke it. You can see it's broken. It's not one stone, but it's a stone that has cracks in it. So until 1948, Haifa was a mixed city, 50% Arabs, 50% Jewish, but something broke it. This is the idea of this garden. It's a memorial garden, but you can't see here the names of the people who died here in the battle for Haifa in 1948, because it's supposed to be something of all the societies, the Jewish society and the Arab society. I'm going now through Hassan Shukri Street. Hassan Shukri, as I said, was a very important part of creating this coexistence between Jews and Arabs in Haifa. So after he died, the city of Haifa decided to name this street where the municipality resides, the town hall resides, and also what was the courts. As I said, the idea of Hassan Shukri that the town hall and the courts should be in between the Jewish neighborhood and the Arab neighborhood, so everyone will feel secure to come and demand their service or to get their service and to get represented equally in regard to their percentage in the community. Okay, I'm going now through Alexander Berwald Street into Hadar neighborhood. As I said, there aren't a lot of remnants from Haifa, the old city of Haifa. One of the more preserved part of Haifa is this neighborhood, the old neighborhood of Hadar neighborhood, Hadar HaKarmel, which is the magnificent of Mount Carmel. This is the name in English. This is we're entering now to the Jewish part of Haifa. Okay, the Jewish part in the old days. Today, this is one of the only neighborhoods today that that Arabs and Jews live together. As I told you, Herzl wrote a lot about in his book Alt Neuland. He wrote mainly about creating a new ideal society. This society of Herzl is an equal society, a society that everyone can be a part of. It's a society that in its core, in its base, the ideas of equality, society, and freedom in a kind of way.
Well, somebody asked about the German colony. How far are we from the German colony?
We're pretty far from the German colony. The German colony is one of the oldest parts of Haifa and one of the most iconic ones. But we're going through Hadar neighborhood. It's about 2 kilometers from here, the German colony. In order for everyone to know what we're talking about, the German colony is one of the colonies that the German Templars a kind of, how do you say, German.
Templars live. Can you just tell us one sentence about the connection to electricity?
Yeah, Herzl writes a lot about not only the moral ideas of the society, but also he writes about a new technological society. One of his ideas, which sounds pretty obvious today, that electricity will be for all the people, okay? So Herzl writes about electricity. To my mind, Esther, you can start the quote.
I think they can read it, it's fine.
Okay. Herzl writes about an idea. At his time, it's not very obvious that electricity should be to everybody in equal. It's like a commodity today, but in Herzl time, it wasn't a commodity. It was something that was preserved to the one who has knowledge, who has wealth. So Herzl writes about the idea that electricity should be for everybody, but not only for everybody, that you should also be able to solve problems through or in the light of electricity. And it's kind of a connection between a connection between the Jews and the modern world, the society, the world society. This is what Herzl writes about electricity. Herzl writes a lot about technology in the service of the society. We're now in Herzl Street. I can't hear you, Esther.
Pinchas Rotenberg, he was the one who really established electricity in Israel.
Yeah. Pinchas Rotenberg, 15 years after Herzl dies in 1904, Pinchas Rotenberg does Aliyah, comes to Israel with an idea of creating a network of electricity in Israel. This dream, idea, vision that nobody wants to support at first. Pinchas Rotenberg moves mountains, you can say, and after a lot of convincing, gets a charter to build the first electric station in Israel. The first one was between Jaffa and Jerusalem. The second one, because it's important to the north, to the land of Israel, the second one was in Haifa. And again, he decides to build it here in Haifa because of Herzl's idea. Pinchas Rotenberg reads Altneuland and decides to come to Israel and create in Haifa these new ideas, this connection between technology and society. We saw earlier a bit about the chimneys. We saw in the scenic view the edge of the chimneys of the new power plant, but today we can't see this wonderful picture here in the presentation because this building does not exist anymore. I'm going now through Herzl Street. Okay, you can see.
Once you're working there, this is the question. Why
Can't hear
is
you, Estelle.
Haifa in the Guinness Book of Records? Anybody know? Why is Haifa in the Guinness Book of Records? Does anybody have any ideas that can answer in the chat? We're about to show you.
So as Esther asked, Haifa holds the record. Haifa holds a record, a Guinness record, for nearly 70 years, more than 70 years. More than 70 years that Haifa holds Guinness record.
My mind.
And yeah, no, you can go through past this video. This record is a record that Herzl gives its idea So go to the quote of
the Carmelite, which Odi is talking about, the shortest underground funicular railway in the world. And this is what he says: electric overhead train, based in Europe, and it's still in Europe. It's still in Haifa today. I'm sure many of you have seen it.
So Haifa has the shortest funicular
in
the world.
Sorry, yeah.
And now, before we'll show you another video, short video, I want to show you here, this is Herzl Street, okay? Until today, this is the main street in Haifa, although there isn't any main street in Haifa. Haifa is a city that is built in several centers. It has several centers, but these centers were connected during the British Mandate, and Haifa became a cohesive city. And Herzl Street was decided that it will be the main street. Until today, this is one of the busiest streets in Haifa. Today, as you can see, we're still in a kind of a lockdown here, so there aren't a lot of people on the streets. And the stores are also, most of them are closed. But I want to show you a couple of things. You see the buildings are very, very interesting in their architecture. In a couple of minutes, we'll show you a video that will depict this street again. The video that Esther will show you in a minute is a video or is a part of a video of a film that is called The Promised Land. In Hebrew, it's L'chaim Chadashim. It's a film that was created by Keren HaYesod in order to encourage Aliyah to the land of Israel in the 30s. The part that you will see now is filmed here in Haifa on this street, and you will see these balconies, okay, in Herzl Street. It depicts the Haifa in Shavuot during the holiday, okay, and you'll see. Look at the people, how they look. We're near Jerusalem Street. I'll go through it, or I'll show you Jerusalem Street, and I'll show you now. You'll see this balcony there.
Udi, I'm going to show us a
yeah, okay. You'll see the balcony. You see the balcony that I'm looking at now.
Right, let's see the balcony.
You'll see the balcony in the video also, a video from the 30s.
When the grain and the fruit harvests are in, the Jewish festival is celebrated as it was in the ancient days of the temple. In Haifa, at the head of the valley of Jezreel, the Palestinian Thanksgiving is observed amid colorful scenes. The wanderers of 2,000 years have come home. In their homeland, they express their gratitude for the new life which is theirs, and for the promise which it holds out to millions of exiles scattered throughout the world. The fulfillment of an ancient dream.
we need to finish soon, and if maybe there.
Yeah, I'm going now to our final stop.
So we're going to our final stop. If there are any questions, then either by chat or people can unmute. So you can see, first of all, it's a film from Keren Hayesod, the precursor to the UJIA, and you can see a very developed Haifa already in 1934, 1935, which is actually quite interesting. So we're going to go back to Udi to see our final stop with a quote, which we'll come back to. Thank you, Udi. And as you notice, it's a lovely day here in Haifa, and I'm in the south of Israel. No autumn leaves as you have in the UK, but that's what we have here.
Okay, for our final stop, I'm going now to one of the things that Herzl talks about the most in his book. One of his most emphasized things is education. Herzl talks a lot or writes a lot about education in this new city as a tool of creating equal chances. So after Herzl dies, in 1911, this building was built. This is one of the most iconic buildings in Haifa. This building is, in Hebrew, it's called the Technion, which is the highest high institute for technology. Okay, today the Technion is one of the biggest and most important universities in Israel. But the first building, today it's not here. Today this is the National Science Museum. And you can see this huge building in the middle of a neighborhood, of a residential neighborhood. You see the entrance. It looks like a kind of a temple, and it's not by chance. This is a kind of a temple. This is the temple for the religion of for the modern religion, for knowledge. Okay, this is why they decided to build here this building, this university. It was the first university in Israel. Herzl writes about education. As I said, in order to create equality, you need a kind of a baseline that everyone will go through this. So Herzl writes about in this new society that education will be for everyone, with no regard to how much money your parents have. And he also writes about a uniform in the education system. In 1911, this building began this building construction. Okay, it was finished in 1913, sorry, but it was neglected for 10 years, and only in 1924 they began the studies here, and it was who financed it was, sorry, in a bit, it was and still it was the first university in Israel to be built. Herzl wanted it to be called the Zion University, okay? But Herzl in 1904, as I said, died, and this idea of this university was built after him. In 1924, for its grand opening, the founders, or the directorion,
the founders of the university.
Yeah, the founders of the university decided to approach one of the most famous Jewish researchers, scientists. So he and asked him to be its first dean, and they approached Albert Einstein, who told them that he's not interested in putting himself into this local politics, but on its opening, he and his wife came here to the Technion and planted 2 palm trees, this one and the second one there. The Technion was in the middle of a struggle, the language struggle, on which language should the studies begin in. The idea of the founders was that the studies will be in German because that was the language of science that day. But the population here in Haifa and throughout Israel wanted that in the first university in Israel that they will study in Hebrew. So a war of languages, a war of tongues was started. But as I said, it was the building itself was neglected for 10 years, mostly because of the First World War. Okay. So after we talked about Herzl and we saw a bit about Haifa, I wanted to finish with a quote by Herzl. As I said, Herzl writes a vision, a story, a novel that depicts a vision to an ideal society, an exemplary society. He writes about his ideas in 1902. The book is published in that year. Herzl finishes his book with 2 quotes that I wanted you to see. And I read, "Dream and deed are not as different as many think. All the deeds of men are dreams at first and become dreams in the end. If you will it, it is no legend. But if you will not, it may very well be only a legend dreamt up by myself and will always be so." So this is our tour of Haifa through Herzl's vision to an exemplary society, to a just society. But he says something in the end of the book that is very important. It's dreams, it's what that drives us. It's something that we need in order to create a new thing. But this new thing creates new dreams. And Herzl says in the end, if you will it, im tirtzu in Hebrew, en zo agada. This is the most iconic phrase Herzl says. Im tirtzu en zo agada. If you want it, if you will it, it's no legend. But if you will not, im lo tirtzu, if you will not, it was only a legend. So you need to do something. It's not only a vision, it's not only a dream, it's a vision. A vision creates guidelines, how to walk, how to do things in order to get to a new destination.
Udi,
This is, yeah, you're welcome. Again, as I said, I'm sorry about my English. It's been quite a while since I did a tour in English. And yeah, if you want, now is a good time for questions.
Udi, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone for being part of this pioneering tour, which we've done the first time in English. And there were a few questions. One was about the funding of the Technion. Second of all, about how Haifa is prepared if there's an attack from, how is Haifa prepared for missile attacks? Maybe there's something.
Okay, so I'll answer the second one because it's easier. Haifa today, because of the Second Lebanon War, Haifa did the city, the town hall, the municipality did a kind of a rearrangement in the city. A lot of structures were reinforced with steel and concrete, mainly Rambam. Rambam is the biggest hospital in the north. So today you have a lot of departments there that are underground, so missiles can't hit it. There are a lot of problems yet. For example, until recently there was a ammonia container in Haifa, which was not reinforced and secure enough. So they moved it, moved parts of it. It's not exactly that easy to move it. So there are preparations to another round of fighting, but it's not, we're feeling now secure. As someone who lives in Haifa, I can tell you, I feel very secure. The second question was about
the funding of the
Technion. The funding of the Technion. The Technion was built by a society from Germany, a company from Germany called Ezra, Help for German Jews. It was they put the first capital, I think, and afterwards the Zionist movement, after the war of languages, the Zionist movement became a more how do you say? רגע, משתתף משמעותי יותר. More significant partner, yeah. So the Technion was first built by a non-Zionist society that wanted to enrich German culture to Jews in Europe and in the entire Ottoman Empire regions. But afterwards, the Zionist movement became a more important part of it. And when the State of Israel was founded, it became the main founder and main, how do you say? המשמעותי, החלק המשמעותי, the main part of it.
Udi, thank you so much. We'd also like to thank Udi for also walking, also practicing his English, also telling us about Haifa. We'd like to thank, on behalf of the Ben-Gurion Heritage Institute, Dima and Steve from the Zionist Federation. Have a wonderful Zionist Congress in 2 days' time. You can think about Herzl spraining his ankle at Jaffa Port when he arrives here, and some of the places in Haifa. So really thank you very much for joining us. Over to you, Dima.
Yes, thank you very much, Esti and Udi, and thank you very much for our guests and listeners. It was really fascinating journey about Haifa. Me, myself, being a couple of times in Haifa, I still learning something new. I would like to make a couple of announcements. The first one, as you probably hear from Udi, we will have 38 Zionist Congress, which this year will run by online. This means you have an opportunity to be part of it. Just follow the website, our Facebook page, and Zionist Federation Facebook page. Another event what we're going to have in the 3rd of November, it will be ZF annually Balfour lecture with Professor Eugene Kantorovich and Colonel Richard Kemp. And our next lecture about inspirational Zionists will be about, it actually will be kind of event, lecture and music about Hannah Senesh, which will be on Sunday, 8th of November. Just please follow us in our Facebook page. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day. Stay safe and see you in our next event.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.